Okay, here's where we are. It's time for us to begin. We're glad everybody's here. It's nice and cool in our building, and we're grateful for that. Before we begin our class, we'll go to our Father in prayer. Dear Father, we bow our heads before you, and we pray that our hearts would always be bowed before you. We're so thankful that you are our God and that you love us and that you care for us, and that you have been able to look into our future, and you have provided for our needs, that you have provided for our weaknesses, and that, Father, we're able to come to you and come before your throne because of what you have done for us through your Son. Otherwise, dear Father, there would be no way that we could approach you. And there would be no words that we could say that you would hear. But because you look at us through the blood of your Son, then, Father, we know that you will hear us, that you will answer our prayers. Please give us wisdom. Please forgive us of our wrongs. We ask that you please be with those that are hurting and those that are grieving. Dear Father, we ask that you be with those that are sick. Our Father, we ask that you please be patient with us as we strive to do your will. And we ask that you please never forget that we are just flesh and blood. Help us never to forget who we are, and help us never to forget who you are. And we pray this through Jesus' name. Amen.
Is that all?
I don't know. I guess. That's no. He said, Dickie said, I couldn't hear him. That's okay, because there's we are to that place in our lives. There's a lot of things. This is our example. This is our example of enlightenment. And it's in John chapter 9. And the reason it's there is because of the blind man that was used for the work of God. And when you start saying, this is for the work of God, this is for the ergon of God, then we need to realize that God's work is enlightenment. So when we look at this, then pay attention. The man was blind. Just a minute, let me. And here's what they asked. They said, how did you become able to see? That's what they, and you know what they're saying? They're saying, enlighten us. We want to know how you, a blind man from birth, how you are able to see. And isn't that's a reasonable question, isn't it? Is to say how? We want to know. What are they asking for? They're asking for enlightenment. Whose work is that? Well, that's God's work. And guess who God's going to use to bring about that enlightenment? He's going to use a blind man. And what the blind man says is what God would have said had he been there, or what Jesus would have said had he been there and they were asking them. But what did God and Jesus do to accomplish their work? They used this blind man. So here's what Jesus said. And when he was asked who sinned, he said, it's not that. We're here to do the work of God. And so here's what the blind man, this was his answer. How did you see? How were your eyes open? We want to know. Enlighten us. Well, there was a man named Jesus. He made clay. He put the clay on my eyes. He told me to go wash my eyes in Siloam. I did what he told me to do, and then I received my sight. Anablepo, that means I could see after that. And so that's what they heard. And it is this physical change that occurred in the blind man's body that Jesus is referring to when he says, we must work the works of him who sent me. And what he's referring to is enlightenment. Now, they're going to keep asking questions, aren't they? Because they want to know more than, okay, how can you see now? You know what? If any of us saw somebody that had been blind since birth and they're grown, and the next Sunday they come to church they can see, what would you want to know?
How did it happen?
That's right. You would want to be enlightened as to exactly how this happened, and what would our expectation be? Well, that you went to Memphis and you had some kind of surgery and they had a transplant of eyeballs, and maybe we've never read about that and we didn't know about it, but apparently there's somebody in Memphis that has, and they can do it because you were blind, but now you see. And that would be our expectation. And what would you think if they said, well, when I couldn't see, this guy walked up and he spit on the ground and he made a clay out of the spit and the dirt and he rubbed it in my eyes and then told me to go wash my eyes in Kuckelberg, and I did. You'd say, no, that didn't happen. And you'd want to know more, wouldn't you? You'd want to be enlightened. Now, notice the reaction of the blind man in his testimony regarding what had occurred. Here's what he told them. In verse 25, he said, I was born blind. And here's what they want to know. Well, then who sinned? You see the word, I was born blind? Who sinned? Well, certainly it wasn't him. He was born that way. So he couldn't have sinned. So there goes your Deuteronomic theology, doesn't it? That's out the window. He says, now I see. I was blind, but now I see. That's significant, isn't it? And then he says this in verse 11, Jesus opened my eyes. Well, that gets their attention. Jesus opened your eyes. Oh, he's the one that goes around and feeds 5,000 people and feeds 4,000 people with what? 5 fish and 2 loaves? He's the guy that's been raising people from the dead. He's the guy that's been turning water into wine, and everybody is getting excited about him. And here is the testimony: Jesus opened my eyes. And that's indisputable. Now, here's some conclusions that this man draws from these first 3 statements. And the conclusion is, he must be a prophet. Who is a prophet? Well, a prophet is a spokesman for God. What are you supposed to do when a spokesman from God comes to you? You're supposed to listen to him, aren't you? You're supposed to hear what he has to say. Because what is the prophet of God that's come to speak to you? What is he going to tell you? That's right. He's going to tell you the Word of God. And what will that Word do? It will enlighten. What is the work of God? Enlighten. What is the work of Jesus? Enlighten. This man that was blind, now he sees. He says, maybe you ought to start listening to Jesus. Maybe God's trying to enlighten you. And he says, here's what we know because I was blind, and now is he jumping to these crazy conclusions? Is this stuff crazy? I mean, is he making this, is this an illogical leap from I was born blind, I see, he did it? Who is he?
He's got to be a prophet if he can do that.
That's right. Isn't that why God gave them these works of the manifestations of the power of the Holy Spirit? To confirm that this person that's speaking is speaking on behalf of God? And how many times did that happen? Well, throughout the Old Testament, that's what the prophets always did. You remember Elijah? And he said it won't rain. And for the space of 3 years, it didn't rain until he prayed. And then the rain came back. And didn't the prophets say, if what we prophesy about the future, if it comes true, then you'll know that we're a prophet of God and that we speak for God. If it doesn't happen, then don't listen to us. That's what the prophets of God said. And so here's what he says in verse 31. Jesus is a worshiper. Is that an illogical jump from I was blind, I see now, he did it? Is that illogical to say he's a worshiper of God? No. Why is it not illogical? That's right, because he's doing the work of God. You can't do that without God. Satan's not doing that, is he? So he says, and this is his conclusion, Jesus does God's will. Therefore, Jesus came from God. And then in verse 38, he makes this leap. And I guess we could call this the leap of faith, couldn't we? And the leap of faith is Jesus is God's Son. And that's where they come unglued. They don't want to hear that. Because if he is the Messiah and if he is the Son of God, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to listen to him so that they too can see. That's right, and be enlightened. And that's the way the narrative ends. Are we blind too? And what did Jesus say to them? He said, no, if you were blind, then there would be an excuse, but there's not. And none is so blind as he who will not see. And none is so deaf as he who will not hear.
And the thing about it, they all knew he was blind from birth. So
That's-
they knew it had to be a miracle.
Yeah. They knew this, and they knew that for sure.
Right.
And they only had his word for this. And everybody else was scared to say this because they'd get kicked out of the synagogue. And so you've got this blindness. And so what's Jesus doing? He's trying to, even his enemies, what's he trying to do? To teach them. He's trying to enlighten them. He's trying to open their eyes so that they will see that he is the Son of God. Whose work is that? That's God's work. That's Jesus' work.
He understood they were as blind as he was, as the blind man.
Yeah. That's right. It was a different kind of blindness. It was a spiritual blindness, and they needed to be healed too, didn't they?
Right.
And so that's what this is all about. We would be limited if the work of God is to cause people that are blind to see. I know I'd be out in the cold. I couldn't do that at all. I could give them some eye drops, or I could get a wet rag and put it on their face. But that'd be about it. They'd be coming to the wrong guy if they were blind and wanted to see. But he's referring to enlightenment. He's referring to spiritual enlightenment. Now, that brings us to this point. What is the disciples' work in this process of enlightenment? Here's what Paul did. In Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 18, he said that his prayer was that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened. Sometimes I wake up at 2 o'clock and I lay there and I can't go back to sleep. So instead of just waste the time, I pray. I've prayed for a lot of you. Brooks, I've prayed for you sometimes at 2 o'clock. And it's just whoever I think of, whoever comes to my mind. Danny, I prayed for Amanda, and I prayed for the baby, that she would be okay and that the baby would be fine. And I guess when I wake up, I'll continue to do that, because that's something that we can do. And Beth, I prayed for the little kids too at school that you said were suffering, and they were going through some difficulties. And I didn't know their names, but I still, I can pray for them. But here's what Paul did. He prayed for enlightenment, that people might see. Do you understand that when you do that, that's part of our work as disciples? That sometimes you're not given the arena where you can talk to somebody because of the way that they feel they don't want anybody to talk to them. But guess what you can do, and they might not even know about it. You can pray that God would give them enlightenment. Will He answer that prayer? Will He make people see truth? Yes, He will. Can He do that without making people choose? How do you know God can make people see truth? What do you think the prophets were doing when they came to God's people? And they said to the prophets, "We're going to stone you." They still had to listen. They had to listen to Isaiah before they persecuted him. They had to, Ahab had to listen to Micaiah before he finally starved Micaiah to death in prison. They had to listen first, didn't they? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Nebuchadnezzar had to listen. Was it Nebuchadnezzar that built the idol? Okay. He had to listen to them before he put them in the fiery furnace, didn't he? Will God make people see truth? Yes. Can we pray that their eyes might be enlightened? Yes. Will God answer that prayer? How does He do it? I've seen Him do it with a second grade teacher.
He's got everything at his disposal to use.
That's right. He's got a huge toolbox.
I mean, there's nothing out of his control that he can't use.
That's right. And now you're going to think this is silly. But could God make somebody have a cough? And maybe they felt something around their heart and it scared them and they thought maybe I was having a heart attack, when actually all they were having is gas, but their emotions start running away with them. And then what do they start thinking about?
Salvation.
That's right. They start thinking about, I'm going to leave this world one day. That'll enlighten you, won't it? You get to a certain age, don't you? And where you used to never think about leaving this world, you get to a certain age and you start looking at your skin and you start looking at the changes in your life, and you start looking at, I can't run from this base to that base. And you start reimagining yourself as getting old. And then you become more interested in spiritual things, don't you? See, here's the point. You do this. If you pray for enlightenment, and God has all kinds of tools in his toolbox, it's important for us to pray for enlightenment, isn't it? For people that we love and that we care about. And will it make a difference if we take their name to the throne of God? Yes, it most certainly will make a difference. So here's what Paul asked for. He said, I want them to have a deeper comprehension of the Christian's hope. I want them to have a deeper understanding of the riches of a Christian's inheritance. I want them to have a greater awareness of the power of God as shown by the resurrection. All of those are good things, but all of those things are connected to what? Enlightenment. They're connected to God, and they're connected to enlightenment. And that's our work. Well, what did you not do this week? Did you go up and down the block and knock on the door and say, hey, I've got a tract, and I'm going to give you this tract. I want to give you this invitation to come to our church services on Sunday morning. Is that our work? Well, it could be, couldn't it? But that's not the only thing. What if you pray for enlightenment? Well, Paul is praying for their life-changing insights. That's what he wants. He wants them to have insights that would change their lives. What if you're separated by 400 miles from somebody that you're concerned about? Or you're 800 miles from somebody that you're concerned about? Can you still pray that they would have insights? Yeah, and you can send them a text, and there's just a lot of things that we can do. And here's what I'm trying to get us away from. I'm trying to get us away from this feeling guilty because we say, well, I'm not doing anything. You are doing something. If you are developing the fruits of the Spirit in your life, you are involved in life-changing processes that will most certainly make a difference in the eternal outcome of people's lives. Is that not what we're supposed to be doing? To help people have enlightenment? So here's what, it's first a personal enlightenment, isn't it? You have to be enlightened first. It's kind of like, you don't want me to teach calculus because I'd have to go back and learn calculus before I could teach you calculus. And I could put some numbers and problems and stuff on the board, That's right. And that's why Jesus said, you are the light, you are the salt. He said, they are not of this world. They've been enlightened. That's why they're not of this world. He says, now present your members as slaves to righteousness, resulting in sanctification. How are you sanctified? What did Jesus say when he prayed for the sanctification of his followers? He said, sanctify them, which means to set them apart. Sanctify them through thy, starts with a W, word. Thy word is truth. How are we set apart? How are we enlightened? By the Word of God. And that changes us, doesn't it? Enlightenment always changes people. He says, however, you are not of the flesh, but you are in the Spirit. Romans chapter 8 and verse 9. And be transformed. Notice how they're transformed. By the renewing of your mind. Romans chapter 12 and verse 2. What are you doing sitting in this class tonight? Hopefully you're gaining enlightenment. And you have to be enlightened first before you can go enlighten somebody else. Are you doing the right thing being here tonight? Yes. When you go to Tuesday ladies Bible class, are you doing the right thing? Is that the only thing you can do? What if you don't go? Well, that means I'm not. No, I don't want you to feel guilty. We got to stop that. I want you to understand that as God has so many different tools in His toolbox to help people become enlightened, you are one of those tools that He will use to bring enlightenment into this world. And it may be small things that you don't even realize that you're doing. But you're still doing the work of God. Well, when's the last time you knocked on a door? In the 60s, that was big stuff, wasn't it? And we all felt like we had to do it, and I was right out there with you. In different parts of the country and different places, but I was out there. Did it work? Sometimes. Is that the only way that you can do God's will? No. God has a lot more tools than just that. But here's what we need to know. If enlightenment does not change a person's lifestyle, that means that if there's no change in who you are, that means you continue to be in blindness to the will of God, because that is what enlightenment always does. It changes people.
Basically, you got light, you got dark, and you're no in between.
That's right. And you're either progressing, you're progressing toward God, which is the light, and you're learning more and more and more, and it's increasing, or you're moving away from the light. That's why you have to be careful. You got to keep reassessing and saying, am I developing the fruits of the Spirit? Because it happens naturally. Enlightenment is naturally an influence in this world. Do you want to go out and knock doors? If you want to, that's fine. Do you have to? No, you don't have to. But if you want to, go ahead. Is that the only way that you can do the will of God and help people to be enlightened? No, it's not. So if I try to make you feel guilty, am I doing what God wants me to do? Just by making you feel lousy and guilty? No, that's not. What does God want us to do? He wants us to enlighten one another, doesn't he? And so that's what we need to be doing. We'll stop there and we'll. Hey, there's it.
Okay, I've got just two announcements. One, a big thank you for Eddie for Sunday night cooking the meat. And second, thanks to these young fellas and Johnny Wayne and the young ladies that took care of the meal, and especially the service the young guys done Sunday night. We really appreciated it and we really enjoyed it. And the next announcements I have, and I don't know if many of you know Joy Brooks from Leachville. That's Larry's wife. She passed away, and service will be Saturday, visitation at 10, funeral at 11 at Howard's Funeral Home. And I think Tim will be doing that service part of it. So let's keep those in our prayers. Those will be doing the service.
Would you be poured out like wine upon the altar for me? Would you be broken like bread to feed the hungry? Would you be so one with me that you would do just as I will?
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this day. And please forgive us of all the sins I made and not make again. And thank you for the many blessings that you bless us with. And please be with my dad while he's flying and about to come back home. Please watch over him. And please be with anybody that needs the prayers of the church. And I love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
I hope you read your daily Bible reading today. It's a very interesting passage. It's in Joel. Well, let me find my notes. They're in here. There they are. It's in Joel chapter 2. If you need to go back and read it. Here's what's interesting when you read it. You run across these passages. In Joel chapter 2 and verse 28 it says, "And it will come about after this." And so you know that the prophet Joel is going to say something prophetic because of the way he announces it. And it will come to pass. And in those days, Joel chapter 2 and verse 29, you know what he's doing is he's looking forward. And he's looking forward to a time and a place in history in those days. And then he says in verse 32, "And it will come about." And you know that what he's doing is he's looking forward to something that is going to happen. And at the end, he tells us that what it is that's coming about after this and in those days, and it will come about, is something that is so catastrophic that when it occurs, the world will never, ever be the same again. And he uses descriptions so that we would recognize that and we would understand it. And so here's what happens centuries later. There is a child that is born in Bethlehem that grows up in favor with God and with men. He leaves a carpenter shop and he goes into a city and he changes water to wine. And all of a sudden, a work begins to occur. A cross is planted at a place called the place of the skull, Golgotha. A body is taken off of that cross and put into a tomb. And on the third day, that dead body is raised by the power of God to never die again. And 50 days after that particular event, that everyone in the city is talking about, then there is this sound of a mighty rushing wind that catches everybody's attention, and they come to a central location, and people are talking to them. And somebody says, "These men are drunk." There is no other explanation for what is happening around us except for us to say, these men that are standing before you speaking, they are drunk. But the man that was accused of drunkenness, he says this. He says, these are those days that are to come about. He says, this is that which was prophesied by the prophet Joel. Those days that for Joel were out there in the future. And for Peter, they are the here and the now. He says, today is those days. He says to those people, you are witnessing something. And when it comes about, the world will be changed. And it'll never, ever again be the same. Today, Peter would say, marks the beginning of the last days. The fulfillment of what Joel the prophet spoke through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And although Peter would say these are the last days, you know what Peter would also say? He would say these are the best days. The world is changing, but it's changing for the good. Because now there's going to be forgiveness. Instead of seeking mercy through the blood of bulls and goats and animal sacrifices, from this day forward, here's what we will do. We will seek forgiveness through the blood of the Son of God. And in doing that, we will find forgiveness. Peter says these are the best days because these are the days of redemption, that the debt can be paid and it can be canceled. He says these are the best days because these are the days of grace, a free gift that comes from God. And he says this, and this is important. He says, the real enemy of man is now one step away from being made a footstool by God himself. Yeah, these are the last days, but they are the best days. Because Jesus has been made both Lord and Christ. And this old world will never, ever be the same. Because God has fulfilled his promise that through the seed of Abraham, all of the nations of the earth will be blessed. Now, when they heard this, they were pierced to their heart. And they said to Peter and to the rest of the apostles, brethren, what shall we do? And Peter said to them, repent and let each of you be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, and you shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. For the promise is for you and for your children. Do you see how good it is? These are the last days, but these are the best days. Because the promise that's been made by God is for you and for your children and for all who are afar off, as many as the Lord our God shall call to himself. And with many other words he solemnly testified and kept exhorting them, saying, be saved from this perverse generation. And from that day to this day, this old world has never been the same. And the prophet Joel, if he could come and be here and speak to us, he would say, I didn't know exactly what I was looking toward, but it certainly turned out better than I ever expected. You know what we get to do tonight? We get to offer that very same invitation that Peter offered to people who are still alive on the face of the earth today. The fulfillment of Joel's prophecy continues with us in these days. And we're 2,000 years from the last days, but they're still the best days. And how many days do we have left? I don't know. God didn't say. But I do know this. These are our best days, because we can invite people to come to Jesus, and through faith in Him, they can find forgiveness of their sins and salvation from a very perverse generation. And you have that opportunity tonight to either become a child of God or to make your life right with God. The fulfillment of Joel's prophecy is today. And if you need to, take advantage of it while together we stand and sing.
Jesus was a little children. How the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in their sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this day and forgive us our sins, and please be with my dad while he's traveling. In Jesus' name, amen.